Today I would like to give you a full in-depth video about the AR ecosystem from Snap, including some great monetization options available. Why should you bother to consider their AR tools for your next AR project? And we'll talk about how you can quickly create custom applications and websites by using CameraKit, which by the way is now open to everyone without an approval period. Also, we'll cover how you can leverage Lens Studio to develop lenses for Snapchat, as well as apps or games for the new Spectacles AR glasses. First, I know many of you may be familiar with AR development by using game engines, right? But let's talk about Lens Studio and what makes it stand out from other existing AR solutions. Okay, Lens Studio is first of all completely free. No licenses, no caps on active users, simply free. And it is available for Mac and PC. Lens Studio has somewhat similar look to some of the popular game engines, which is great because it can be easy to learn, but with a huge difference that it is optimized for an augmented reality creator workflow. For instance, if you download Lens Studio today and launch it for the first time, then you will see a variety of AR templates and different project types for Snapchat, for Spectacle AR glasses, and also CameraKit. It is also worth mentioning that Lens Studio was rewritten from the ground up to work with the Spectacles. I'll show you more about this during our demo creation today. Also, if you come from a Unity background, you will find some familiarities between Unity and Lens Studio in terms of terminology. For instance, Unity calls objects in the hierarchy game objects, and Lens Studio calls them scene objects. Unity calls its preview the game view, and Lens Studio simply calls it preview. And prefabs are called the same on both tools, but the idea here is to understand that they are both very similar with a slightly different terms and features. To expand on how Lens Studio works today, let's build 4 simple experiences with the major project types. This will show you how easy it is to get started. We'll start with a face tracking type experience, then we'll duplicate the project and change it to use the rear camera with surface and image tracking. Then we'll create a basic website with Node and Vite as a build tool, where I'm going to be integrating CameraKit from JavaScript to load our first face tracking demo. Lastly, we'll duplicate our surface and image tracking demo, and we'll make it work for Spectacles. All right, guys, so the first thing that we need to do is download Lens Studio. You're gonna see that we have multiple versions here, depending on your computer specs. They provide PC or Mac. Then once you get it downloaded and open it, you're gonna see multiple templates in here for face tracking, for world tracking. There's also project types for each experience type. And then we're gonna be creating just a basically a default application. Just go ahead and save it as soon as you create it. So we give it a name. And then you're gonna see here, there's a logger section that is really helpful when you're creating experiences. Also a hierarchy, very similar to the hierarchy in Unity, where you can see most of the components that are available and also the ones that you can add to your hierarchy. Then there's also an inspector, and this is based on what you have selected from the hierarchy. You can also add behaviors and different components. And then the preview window is really helpful when you want to test your experiences for fast iteration. I really enjoy this. You can use world tracking. You also have this interactive view, which allows you to basically navigate the area. You can use your keyboard to basically navigate. And then if you want to switch the camera to the rear camera, front camera, or reset, or also change some of the settings, such as looking at the frame rate. Also, you can look at the different languages that are available for your lens. Basically, all of this information is going to be mock or simulated. And then you can also change this to use either an iPhone, an Android device. They have different resolutions, which is really helpful. So the next thing that I want to show you though is you can also go from full mode to basically no full mode, which is really helpful to be able to see the FOV when you're developing with Spectacles. I can also look at the camera view, which is also really cool. And then on the asset browser, we're going to be creating a few different folders, one for materials and one for scripts. And then you're going to see in the scene view that we can navigate, we can zoom in, we can look at the top view, right view, bottom view, basically just very similar to different game engines available. So the next thing that we're gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and create a new component, and this is gonna be a basic cube. I just wanna show you some of the different interactions. Once you do it, you're gonna see that it shows in the scene view and also in the preview. We can also navigate, and the cube moves with the camera because we haven't really added device tracking just yet, but we'll do that in a few minutes. You can also rotate the cube. You can also resize the cube. Basically, all the different transform features are available. You can also use the transform component here on the inspector, and you can change these values manually if you needed to do that. Now let's take a look at the material that is assigned automatically. It's a PBR material. And the way that it works is just the system is going to add it, but we can change the material if we like to. I'm going to add a sphere. And then we're going to be creating a brand new material just to show you that there are a lot of different options in here. They have one called gold, and this one is cool because it's going to have a lot of already defined components and a shader available for you out of the box, so we don't have to create it. Let's go ahead and remove the previous one. So if you remove the previous one, you're going to see that it shows a magenta type color, and that's because there is not a material assigned. Once you have the material, we can see that it has this really cool skybox reflection on it. So basically, it just provides you that by default. And it looks beautiful though. So you can see how when we rotate it, we can kind of see a lake in there, or I think an ocean. And then you can also change the colors in here if you want to change it to purple, red, or magenta. Also the roughness you can change, and then if you want it to be very metallic or no metallic, there's just a lot of different options in here available. Now let's go ahead and drag and drop one of the cool models that I have in here. This is gonna be an Iron Man figure and also a helmet. So on the Iron Man, you're gonna see here that we have the helmet, and you can preview it here in this window. I'm gonna go ahead and drag it and drop it, and then once you do that, we're gonna be also resizing this to 0.16, and then you can navigate here and look at it as well. Also, I want to add more reflection, but there are times when you cannot modify the actual shaders, and that's because you need to unpack the actual model. So now that we unpack it, you can see that now we have the options available for us, and we can change the roughness here so that we have a lot more reflection. So if you go to the face components in here, we can add a head binding component. You can also designate what the attachment point is gonna be. And then let's go ahead and drag and drop the Iron Man helmet into the head binding. Now we're gonna be tweaking a couple of the transforms so that we have everything aligned correctly, including the face occluder, which is really cool because it's gonna allow you to occlude different parts of the helmet based on the shape of the face. So now that we have it properly positioned and rotated, you can see that now it looks really good. We're gonna be also duplicating this to use face index 1, and that way we can use this with multiple people, as you guys can see here. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is let's add a twin manager, and this is so that we have basically a text that is going to be displaying at the bottom of the screen. We can change the text, we can change the bounds, and then we're also going to be changing the colors. So for the colors though, I'm gonna add a twin color, and this is gonna be going from basically from red to yellow, and it's going to be animating that. You can also add visual effects, as you guys can see here, like using an analog TV, pixelation, and then there are many others available. So Snap also added GenAI features, and in this case, I'm using the AI assistant. I use it a lot for this tutorial where I needed to implement different scripts. In this case, I wanted a script that is going to basically allow me to set the text of a component that I'm going to be putting under the head binding. So let's go ahead and add the script in here, and then I'm gonna name it head binding info. And basically it's gonna have the code that we have in here. Just gonna go ahead and refactor it because it's not perfect, but it gets me started. So I'm just gonna go ahead and change a couple of keywords here. And now you can see that we use GenAI to generate these pretty quickly with just a few changes. So now we're gonna be adding this to the head binding. It's going to complain because we have to associate the actual text to the head binding info and also the head component, but we haven't created the text yet. So let's go ahead and create that, call it head transform info. We're gonna clone it. And now we can go ahead and associate it with the head binding info component. Wait, but it doesn't work, and that's because I told it to create a text 3D in my AI questions. So now that we fix it, it should work correctly. So you guys can see now that we have the position and also the rotation showing. The cool thing with the preview is you can change this and it changes in real time. We can change it to use different, different views, different people, even the webcam works correctly. So this is all really cool. Let's go to project settings, and I'm gonna go ahead and give my lens a name. I'm gonna change it to use CameraKit. Basically, I'm gonna add CameraKit so that we can deploy these to be able to work with web. So I'm gonna be doing that next. in the next few sections. But for now, let's go ahead and add an icon here, and you can resize it. And I'm using GenAI as well to generate these icons, which is also really helpful. And then you have multiple previews in here for the lens that you're going to be publishing. So just keep in mind that you do need to publish the lenses if you want to, consume them from CameraKit. At least that's what I found out. And that's what I ended up doing, and everything, everything worked. So now that I sent the lens to my iPhone just to test it, you guys can see here that it shows correctly, and it's showing in Snapchat. So now on this section, I'm gonna be duplicating the previous project and then creating a brand new project for surface and image tracking. I did that so that I can show you exactly that this is pretty easy to tweak. Just with a few changes, we can make it work for an experience that is going to work with the rear camera instead of the front camera. So now let's go ahead and add the helmet here as well. I remove it from the clone that I created, so I'm just gonna go ahead and resize it here a little bit and then just change the tracking to use device tracking, and then we're gonna be using surface tracking. There's also world tracking if you wanted to do that. In this case, I'm gonna keep it simple and also use native AR to use some of the native AR features available on my iPhone. So now if I use the interaction, I'm gonna try to move it, but I can't really move it because we haven't really added interactions to this component. So it's really easy, you just have to add an interaction component, and then you need to tell it what the mesh of this component is going to be. And that's so that it knows basically the bounds of what it's going to use to select it. So hit refresh, and then once you hit refresh, it's going to allow you to move the helmet around. And that was pretty easy, but we cannot really see any visualizations when we're selecting these. So I'm gonna show you next how we can change that so that we have more visualizations as far as where the planes are, and then basically what we're doing, right, when we're doing the interaction. So let me show you how we can do that. So I'm gonna search for world controller, and then let's go ahead and hit import. So once you get it imported, we're gonna get this component here. Just go ahead and drag it and drop it. So this is really cool because it's gonna have what we need out of the box. So the world controller component here, it's going to allow you to basically move it around as well, just like we did before. But you're gonna see here in just a second that we're gonna be able to move it and also have some visualizations, right? So let me go ahead and drag and drop the Iron Man helmet inside of the world object controller. And I'm gonna change the touch collision so that we have better, bounds when selecting this with the touch event. And then we need to remove two different components that we already have in the world controller. Go ahead and move it around, and now you can see that we have this really cool grid at the very bottom. All right, so next, let's go ahead and add a marker, and we're gonna use the one from the asset library because it has already a marker image that I want to use, and I printed it out, so I'm gonna show you that when we look at the demo. Then we're gonna go ahead and unpack the Iron Man model, which is really cool. This is gonna be the marker that we're gonna be using. It's an Iron Man and it's gigantic, so we need to go ahead and resize it so that we can look at it better when we adjust it. So I'm gonna resize it, and then we can also adjust here the marker image so that we can show the image as well when we find the marker. So you can see here that we can tweak the values, see them in the preview. And again, this is really powerful because we can iterate without having to deploy to our device every single time. So now let's go ahead and add a twin transform to our Iron Man. So when the marker is found, we're going to be basically scaling the object. It's just gonna add a little polishing to our experience. So I'm going to go ahead and add something called the behavior, and this is gonna allow us to basically tie the event, which is called the marker tracking event. And when the marker is found, it's going to basically run an animation. So you can change the response type to run twin, and it's going to allow us to select the twin, and then we can also give it the name that we're going to be executing when this action happens. And now you can see that it is animating. As soon as it finds a marker, we can still move our helmet around. And then again, this is really powerful. Let's change our view to use the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and everything is working. So now let's go ahead and do what we did before with our face tracking lens, and let's publish it as well. We're going to be getting this available for consumers, so we want to make sure that we publish it as well. And it looks like everything worked. So if you go to lenses, we can check and see if the status of our previous one is approved, and looks like everything is published, is approved, and it should be available in the store. And then this one is in processing state. So now let's go ahead and activate our CameraKit, because we're going to be using CameraKit for our first lens. Create a brand new app and then enable it. Now we're going to have basically this feature here that is going to allow us to select which lenses we want to add to a group. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Ironman booth, which is going to be the one that we have for face tracking. So we're going to add that one to the group. So let's go ahead and unselect the Ironman display and use the Ironman booth. And then you can give it a group name. So think of these of the lenses that you're going to have available through CameraKit, and they need to be published before you can select them. That's why I looked at the state of the approval process. And then we're going to need a couple of IDs here when we implement the website. So I'm going to use Node and then npm to create a new application. This is using Vite behind the scenes. So once you create a new application, which is a very simple website, we're going to be removing different files. We're also going to be removing the contents of main.ts and then installing our CameraKit dependency. And then let's just add the canvas component that we're gonna need. Now, if you need to run it, you just have to write npm run dev in the terminal, and that should start a localhost session that we can use to test our CameraKit experience. So this is cool because this is loading CameraKit and basically the lens from Snap right here in a custom website. You can also change the width and basically apply CSS changes to our HTML. Let's go ahead and go into our Ironman display and make sure that it is approved. Now we're going to be enabling WebAR on this, and this is using CameraKit behind the scenes, which is really cool, but you don't have to do the steps that I did by creating a website from scratch. All right, so in this project, we're going to be changing this to use spectacles on our simulated environment. And if you want to go to full screen, you can do that as well. Everything should work here. I should be able to navigate and also change the different environments. But some of the interactions are not going to work. And the reason for that is because we need to change that. So let's go ahead and move the Ironman helmet out. And I'm going to be removing this component. Now that you have that removed, let's go ahead and change a couple of different transform settings in here. Go into the asset library and then make sure that you import the actual spectacles interaction kit. We're going to be adding that in our asset browser. So let's go ahead and unpack it and then drag and drop the spectacles interaction kit to our hierarchy. So now you're going to see basically the skeletons of our hands, and then different components get added by adding SIK. So if you go to add component on the Ironman helmet, we can add what's called an interactable. And then we can also add a manipulation, basically an interactable manipulation that is going to allow us to interact with this when we're using hand tracking. On the preview, it's going to basically use a simulation, so you can use your mouse to do that. And in the interactable outline feedback that I just added, make sure that we have the mesh as well. We're also going to need a different component under the mesh, and that's going to be a collider. The components that I just added for interactions are going to need a collider. So in this case, I'm just going to add a sphere collider. You can't really see it just yet because the size is not quite right. I'm going to go ahead and constrain or scale and then change this to be about 15. And you can go ahead and just, drag it around until it matches the selection area that you want for your interaction. So now we can move the helmet around. And this was pretty easy, right? We didn't have to code anything. It was just mainly adding components. All right, so now we can send these to your spectacles. Make sure that you have paired your spectacles to your mobile application. Everything in here, it's going to be in USD price, so just keep that in mind as you're doing, your math, your budget. So if you look at Snap Spectacles, it's currently $99 per month, and then you have to do a 12-month commitment. The version of Lens Studio, which is the only one that is available, is going to be completely free. And then Mac or PCs, it's going to work with Lens Studio. And then fast iteration, that means that you're going to be able to basically test right within Lens Studio without having to basically send the lenses, the apps to the device every single time. They also support different resolutions for iPhones, also for spectacles, and it's just really, really cool because they also have different environments. You can use the front camera, the rear camera. It's very rich in terms of what's available for developers to test their applications. So the total in here, we're looking at a little bit more than 1,100, and then this doesn't include any taxes, just keep that in mind. Now, if we look at that amount and you compare it to what's available for Magic Leap 2, the base price for a Magic Leap 2 is pretty high. You can use, I put the actual software first, which in this case, you can use Unity Free to develop for Magic Leap 2. They also support Mac or PC. Fast iteration works on, basically, it doesn't work on the new OpenXR version that they provide, but it works on the older version. So that's something that I really, would want to make sure that you research before you jump in and buy a Magic Leap 2. So this is a little bit more on the high end. It's $3692.99. So that's gonna be a lot more money than actually using the spectacles, right? Then if you look at the X-Real Air 2 Ultra, this one you can use Unity Free. It also works on Mac or PC. They also support fast iteration. I personally haven't done much development with X-Real ever since the Nreal was basically their original brand and then they rebranded. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at these. I would want to make sure that you review and research these before you take my word for it. But right now you're looking at about $699, which is going to be the cost of development for this device. Also, you can use a Beam Pro, which is that media device that you can also use to connect to the X-Real Air 2 Ultra. And that's going to allow you to basically enable more features on the device. Everything doesn't really run on the actual glasses. It's going to basically use this Beam Pro, which looks like a cell phone. That is going to give it, in my opinion, it's gonna give it superpower. So this is about $898. And obviously you gotta basically buy a computer. You have to have a computer, a PC, but you have the option to use either Mac or PC. Then we go into the Apple Vision Pro, which I really like. It's really awesome, but it's really expensive, right? So if you get the 256 gigs, which is basically the lower tier of how much space you're gonna get on the hard drive, we're looking at about $291.58 per month with a 12-month commitment. So this is gonna be roughly $3,500 that you spend on this size. If you get the larger size, this one is going to be a little bit more and it's gonna total to $36.99. None of these includes taxes, so you gotta keep that in mind as well. The version of Xcode is going to be completely free, but this only supports Mac. And if you know, Macs are pretty expensive unless you get like a Mac Mini, but just keep that in mind. If you're a developer, more likely you're gonna get a MacBook Pro, which is gonna be around, I don't know, $1,500 to $3,000, and more likely you're gonna be spending close to $3,000 if you want to make sure that you get the latest and greatest and basically the fastest version so that it's going to last you for a long time. Fast iteration is limited on Xcode, and the reason why I say that is because there are features on ARKit, such as plane detection, such as meshing, that doesn't work on the simulator, so you have to basically push to the device. There's one caveat to that, because if you're using Unity Pro, which is what I'm saying in here, which is optional, they have a lot of different features that allow you to do fast iteration. Basically, there's a remote on the headset that you can be testing your applications from Unity without actually having to deploy. All right, I know that was too cool, but let's think about the long vision for your own entrepreneur journey, right? And answer this question: how do I really make money with Lens Studio today? Well, I know from firsthand that many people use Lens Studio and work on lenses for larger companies. And that on its own is great. You can find contracts where you could work for huge and awesome agencies, but there are also other ways to monetize what you create today. First, Snap provides the Spectacles Lens Fan, which supports teams of devs building high-potential use case lenses on spectacles, including lenses that provide everyday utility, experimental learning, creative tools, communication, AI-powered experiences, or share in social experiences. As part of the program, devs receive funding, direct access to the Spectacles team, and also lens promotion. In addition, you can also get opportunities to get early access to future hardware, and I also asked Snap about the funding amount. They responded that it varies. It is based on factors like product, project vision, size, scope, milestones, and timeline. Whether your product is large or small, Snap really recommends that you submit it, as the most important factors are the clarity of your vision and the ability to execute. Second, Snap provides the Lens Creator Rewards Program, which is a way for Snap AR creators, lens developers, and teams to get rewarded for building top-performing lenses on Snapchat. AR creators and developers are earning anywhere from a few $100s to thousands of dollars for lenses that perform pretty well. So next, if you'd like to learn more about spectacles, be sure to look at the video above where I go over an in-depth review and tutorial on how you can get started with the spectacles development. Also be sure to look at the links in the description below to get started with Lens Studio. Thank you very much everyone, and let me know if you have any comments below, and happy XR coding!